So welcome to our first coffee chat for the year. So Natalie, what we normally do is, well, what the forum is basically for is for two things. One, to celebrate success stories for small businesses. Also for small businesses to come forward and present to us. We have a team of people who are quite knowledgeable in their respective areas. And small businesses come forward and we offer free advice to the challenges that they're experiencing. Obviously, we do a bit of groundwork before we have the coffee chat, so that we know more or less what the challenges are in the business. Okay, so this week, I want to introduce a new format from what we did last year. So this year, we're not going to have a coffee chat every single Friday. So we've decided to change it to every second Friday, so twice a month. And the idea is one of the Fridays we will use to have a panel discussion like we're going to do today on a topical or trending issue or topic that affects small and medium-sized businesses, or actually business in general. And then the second Friday in the month, we are going to invite a small business to come forward and share with us their business challenge, and we'll endeavor to see if we can either solve that challenge or just offer advice. Okay, so let's start with this week. So this week we have a very interesting topic, and the person who's going to present to us is almost Dr. Garth Gaffley. He hasn't quite received his marking.
Never met him.
He hasn't received his marking back from the university, so he's not quite sure whether he's a doctor yet or not. But the topic is very interesting, is that data and analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning and what all these buzzwords is becoming so topical that everybody now is starting to jump on the bandwagon, whether it be the new way of reporting or a new way of looking at data. So everybody's jumping onto the bandwagon now to try and get somebody into their company who can help them either do better business intelligence type of reporting, or starting to use analytics, and there are various layers of analytics. But what nobody's really delved into, and this is what Garth was studying in his thesis, was how does a CEO who is of a certain demographic, who probably was never exposed to data science or data analytics, how does he prepare his organization to be competitive in this new sort of way of working? And it's not about learning about this is how you must analyze data or anything like that. It's about how to reposition your company. So I'm going to hand it over to almost Dr. Gaffley and let him take us through what he wants to tell us today.
Hundreds.
It's all yours, Dr. Gaffley.
So, thank you. I prefer to be called Meneer or Mr. at this stage. The title of today's little discussion is the new leadership mindset for data and analytics. And I've spent the last 3 years researching this particular aspect in the branded goods manufacturing sector in South Africa. I have a technical, commercial, marketing and sales background, so I'm a bit of a chameleon on a smarty box. One of the things I did encounter was that at leadership level, when you have a certain demographic and generational influence, there's an aversion to technology and an aversion to getting involved in technology, and almost a fear to lead a process that fundamentally business hasn't changed, but it's the delivery of different business systems that has changed. So around that, what I did is I'm a member of the MIT Sloan Management Institute at Harvard, and they did a 4 publication on this very topic. And between the 5 authors or 6 authors in this publication they put out, each of these authors has had relevance to my research findings, and this is as of 2021. Obviously, the research they would have conducted would have been last year. And mine goes back to 2019, sort of completing the exercise mid last year. And technology changes so fast that I want them to mark this damn thing of mine so I can get cracking with repositioning my business. But I think let's move on. Must I drive, Rich, or are you going to drive? Okay. So I've broken the
Okay.
6 topics into 6 processes. And the first process is how large companies can grow their data analytics talent, their data and analytics talent. And the author there is a guy called Thomas Davenport. And the idea of data scientists are these unicorns who possess all these skills at high level. It's not realistic. A data scientist is a specific individual that performs specific tasks, but not necessarily the most avid communicator in the organization. And your legal representative at board level might be the best communicator from a social awareness perspective, and they will communicate the company or business's position a lot better. But yeah, I think if we move on to the next slide, how then do we develop this talent, and how do we focus on analytics as opposed to just hard business? Companies need to identify the type of talent they need to have to become data driven. Okay, I hope that print's not too small.
Okay.
But an example used by leadership is that one has to understand, if you're the leader, him or her, you must understand your data and analytical community that's out there that you're catering for. And this article by Davenport uses the TD Bank of America. In fact, it's a Canadian bank that has interests throughout North America. But what they did is they said, look, guys, we've got to go digital, and we've got to just embrace technology and be there for our customers. And what they did is they said, okay, let's go into the customer base and let's identify roles that emerge from the customer base so that we can communicate more effectively with them. In the process,
Just a question then. Maybe you can just give us a little bit of background of what everybody has a different opinion of when you mention the word we need to go digital. What does it actually really mean?
Okay, digital is the all-encompassing phrase of where we use technology to better affect our decision-making throughout an organization. For example, I've often asked at CEO level, how's your digital transformation going? In fact, I did it as part of my research. I know it's fine. We leave it up to the youngsters in marketing to get on with it. You know, we're all on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. That is not digital transformation. That is a component of data and how you manage data and how you use technology to provide data as information upon which you can base forward-thinking decisions. So I hope that defines it in a nutshell. And I don't want to get too analytical because we'll be here tonight, same time if we do. But I hope that explains the question, Richard. So
it does.
When you come back to this TD Bank, so they define 65 specific job roles and job descriptions, which obviously has a major impact on how this bank is going to move forward. Firstly, have they got the talent in the bank? They potentially at leadership level, the his and hers are potentially of what they call the digital disciple brigade, the baby boomers and just younger generations, not too keen to get their hands dirty and you know, participate in technology. But what needs to be done is you need to look internally and say, is our talent sufficient to take us forward? If it's not, what can we do to acquire this talent? And what TD Bank did in North America is they then merged with a company called Layer 6. And Layer 6 was an AI company that developed algorithms for particular applications in the financial services. And they immediately appointed that CEO to their board and let that CEO drive the artificial intelligence, the algorithms, and the data-driven aspects of their banking business to go forward into cater for their community and both analytical and your general customer community. And in the process, a data analytical mindset has to be inculcated in the business. Now, most CEOs today's world will go out and do a good old boss barat, or, you know, let's go wait for a weekend and we do a strategy session. Well, you're doing the same thing here. You don't necessarily need to bore people for 3 days with how important you are to lead this business forward. You do it through Zoom, you do it through communicating at board level. You know, you can condense 3 days into 3 hours and be very successful. But you need to start saying to the business guys, what data do we have? It's not necessarily what we have, it's what we do with that data that we have to make our decisions to go forward. So that sort of encompasses where you look for talent. You look internally, you train people internally, you look for partnerships and alliances, and then you develop not only with commercial alliances, as TD Bank did with Layer 6, but they also went to there are 2 institutions. One is, I think it's called Vector in Toronto and Mila in Montreal. And they formed alliances with these people so that they could get the top-end training and top-end thinking on data as part of their partnership to take the business forward. I'd like to move on, Rich. Brings us on to the second process, which is changing culture. And the tail end of the previous slide sort of alludes to culture. And as we know, culture is central to changing business models. The group of authors for this particular article is Lanham Napier and a couple of associates, someone called De Vries in there, I think is a South African. But while culture provides the foundation for organizational and industrial stability, it's also the force that keeps leaders stuck in their old ways of conducting business. And I refer, why I talk leadership is that essentially your older levels, bar your startup companies where you've got a very youthful leadership level, your more traditional businesses, medium to large, and your corporates, largely run by your 45 plus brigade. And sometimes it's not nice to get out of that comfort zone that you've been used to. If you're a Unilever person or a Procter & Gamble person, I know these companies have changed, but what comes to mind here is a company like L'Oreal. L'Oreal is the fragrance, perfume, hair care, personal products company, one of the largest in the world and on the top Fortune 500 in the New York Stock Exchange. A very traditional business. But what L'Oreal said is we have to change. We have to go away from scientists driving molecules that they think appeal to a female audience or a female consumer because it smells good. You've got to go on your social media platforms to that consumer and ask them what they want and interpret your social media findings to come back to tell the scientist, listen, the ladies in Paris, they want this fragrance, not the benzene modified molecule that you're working on. So start. L'Oreal have taken it so far that they have at board level, they've got a lady called Subramira Roche, who was one of the heads of one of the top digital agencies in Europe. And they brought her in and appointed her about 3 years ago in 2017, I think it was, as a board member reporting directly to the CEO. And his brief to her was change this business, digitally transform it for us. And she set about with that level of authority and credibility to change this business entirely. Today, you can't walk into L'Oreal without a certain digital skill set. It is almost a totally transformed business, and that's transforming and changing the talent and behavior of 30,000 odd people around the world. A fantastic case study, and if any of you are keen on the link, I can send you the YouTube link. It's really a worthwhile listen. She delivered a talk at the London School of Business which for me, it blew me off my seat. And it's been the foundation and cornerstone of my dissertation from the analytical, theoretical perspectives of how it can be done. Anyhow, let's move on to the next slide. If there are any questions, just stop me, please. So with culture being central to changing and there potentially being resistance because of culture, leaders need to examine their core beliefs. That if they want to prosper in a COVID-19 world, they've got to change. We have to change. Zoom is part of our lives now. If you're battling with Zoom, the advice is, and sorry, Natalie, this isn't taking a swap at you, is to teach it to yourself. Get on top of it, because it's the one communication channel that's been fantastic for all of us during this time. And it's not the only one. So there are three aspects that we have to look at in terms of culture. Is that leadership? You've got the leaders themselves, this over 40 brigade or 45-year-old brigade, and I'm referring again to established businesses. You've got to change your culture. Apple have the iOS community, Amazon have Prime as in its supplier network, Facebook have Facebook followers, Google have the search and matching algorithms. Legacy businesses where you've been driven by your legacy systems, SAP and Oracle and all these things, got to change. There's a thing called cloud, where size and speed of data retrieval is not an issue anymore. You can put it up there and get hold of it very quickly. You try and tell the IT guys, well, I won't go into that, but it's like the age-old battle between sales and marketing. You know, sales is vanity, marketing is sanity. Sales watch the turnover, marketing watch the bottom line. So I've been on both sides, so I know the challenges. But, you know, you look at businesses that have changed in this COVID-driven challenge that we've had over the last year. Zoom, Shopify, and Spotify. These businesses are thriving. One of the co-sponsors of the 6 processes is Amazon Web Services. Amazon have over 100,000 vacancies worldwide, all in the data-driven space. So, you know, the world is changing and we've got to watch the changes and change with them and adapt our culture. 3 steps to change is obviously sit back, have a look at your thoughts, have a look at where you want to go when you go forward and how you're going to change your workforce to get there. Take, for example, Tesla. Where is Tesla today? It's the most advanced motor vehicle manufacturer in the world. Every action that in 100 meters that a Tesla vehicle drives is captured on data. And Elon Musk makes a decision on how to improve that vehicle for the betterment of its drive experience and its customer, drive and customer experience, and moving on to autonomous vehicles. We are forward today. You know, they led the turn of the century, the last century, they led from horse-driven carriages, they developed the Model T. Well, they've lost out now because their Model T is nowhere in existence in the electric vehicle market of today. Pardon me. Leaders have to communicate their new identity. So as a business leader, you've got to be communicating throughout your organization. Guys, this is where we want to go. Caterpillar, the tractor manufacturers and earth-moving equipment and mining and agricultural people, they developed and thought they were really smart when they put sensors through, they call it the IoT, the Industrial Internet of Things. They're able to put a sensor on every vehicle and they can track where it's going, what it does, its oil pressures, its temperature pressures, its usage of diesel and whatever, and then give the driver or the owners of the vehicle like a dashboard to say, listen, your number 3 cylinder is not performing that well. You better have the thing serviced or whatever. John Deere said, okay, let's have a look at Caterpillar and we can go one better. So every time a plow drops behind a tractor, it's got sensors on that plow that pick up the soil profile. And not only the soil profile, but it can identify certain elements in the soil. So it gives the farmer a readout of potential fertilizer to use, potential crop to put in, and all the other attributes of the vehicle moving through this, this farmland, and the same in its mining application. So these are examples of how culture can change through communication. People can then start being creative and inventive. New KPIs need to go with this shift in your culture change. And we just look at if we take new KPIs, you take Blockbuster, which was the great movie provider with Beta and Sony and all of that. In the last 20 years, they put their emphasis on mortar and bricks corner stores. Well, you look at what Netflix has done today, an online streaming with members, and you can watch almost anything. So change the culture, and those are the steps that one can use: is be creative, educate and communicate to your staff, and set your new key performance areas. And you've got to change your leadership style and that of your board members or senior management. And if you can't, you've got to get rid of them and remove yourself and let someone who can take over. Next one, Rich. This has led to the role. I alluded to this in the L'Oreal example, where they appointed that lady, Subramira Roche, as the Chief Data Officer or Chief Information Officer, as it's called today. But it's these people's roles to take leadership and take responsibility for the data success of that business. So organizations that take steps to build a robust data organization from top, must start at the top, flow to the bottom, and then obviously come back, they will have an advantage in establishing a data culture. Okay. Rich, next slide. So Randy Bean, the author of this third process, says that CDOs must be equipped with the right tools and support so that they can execute the company's data vision. That is so true. If you go back to the L'Oreal case, she had full board support for doing what she decided to do. And she was successful in steering and turning around L'Oreal as a business. So the Chief Data Officer and the emergence is essential to driving your data-driven leadership forward. A data strategy that mirrors the business's strategy and vision must be communicated throughout that organization, as we mentioned, top down. Trust in your data must be engendered throughout the business. How often don't we have to extract from a SAP report and do Excel spreadsheets on Excel spreadsheets on Excel spreadsheets to make the sales data agree with the overall objectives of the business? It happens all too often. And you need to create a compelling career path for data leadership in your organization, not only in the data side of or IT side of the business, but throughout each of in marketing, in sales, in your procurement. Create these data havens where people work with data that can help and assist with key decision making. Also, if you're a data-driven business, the last point there is you need to manage your risk in a data-driven environment. And you'll see further on, 2 slides on in the presentation, looking at your governance and your ethics and your risk, that needs to start from within. And it's probably better to start at the beginning of your data-driven drive than to get there like Facebook did, and then suddenly the American government have tackled them, and these politicians made real idiots of themselves by the questions they asked Zuckerberg. He played with him. He absolutely played with him when he did his Senate hearings. But if Mark Zuckerberg had strategized and formalized his data governance at the start of Facebook, he might not have got to the state and stage where he is today. Just interestingly, as much as we want to appoint these people in an organization, you take data-rich organizations that work on data in their very essence every day, Google and Amazon, they don't have these people because data is ingrained in their DNA. So those are the optimal benchmarks I can process 3 sort of provides for us. Next slide, Rich. Okay, top-down leadership and the approach for data, 7 ways to get started. It's from an article by Thomas Redman. For many leaders, data presents a conundrum. I alluded to that earlier. Your digital disciples, the older generations, they battle. They don't quite know. They pretend to know, but they don't know. I've researched this, and they don't know. If you had to ask for a level of digital transformation in the South African manufacturing sector, it's not even at 50% compared to our major trading partners. We have a huge data gap to fill to be globally competitive. Japan have what they call Japan 4.0, which means that if you're 5 years old or you're 95 years old, you can operate a desktop, an iPad, a cellular telephone, to basically access anything that you need. We have a long way to go in South Africa. So leaders can initiate successful data strategies by focusing on data quality, building organizational capabilities around that, and putting data to work in new ways. Okay. So we're talking of top-down leadership. We've got this mnemonic FBP, and the 7 sort of the approach and 7 ways to get started on your data-driven leadership style is focus on the data quality. Break your quality logjam. Don't have data for the sake of having data. Have data which is specific to your organizational needs. If there's something troubling you, get to the bottom of it. Nissan, for example, in their manufacturing line, they use robotics to spot weld certain body parts. And this is no inference to the company, please. But what they would work on is a certain KPI of spot welds on a motor car vehicle body at, let's call it a 98.5% level of accuracy. When you go into the actual robotic behavior and you monitor that robotic arm has a standard deviation attached to it, which you can correct. And that means you can take your accuracy of weld from 98.5% to 99.5%. And the impact of that on your operating line and on your manufacturing capability is huge when you're producing millions of vehicles a day. So it's a little example. There's a company down in Cape Town called Data Profit. Data Profit have worked with the engineering a motor vehicle engine manufacturing company along the same lines, where they took away the standard deviation on accuracy of engine mold. They built an extra 5% recovery into that engine manufacture. It meant millions to that organization. So let me keep moving. Get to the bottom of issues and use your data to help you. Get everybody on the same page. Don't only make it marketing and what they do on Twitter or on a social media platform. Get it to cascade throughout that organization. If you're at Cadbury Sweetened Chocolates, now called Mondelez, and your front end, your returns on Crunchy from a certain store is very high, and yet on a lunch bar, everything's consumed. Go and find out. Why does that happen? What's the demography of my shopper or customer or consumer? It's that maybe the palate differs from region to region. I know it does. But anyhow, bring data science to your strategic decisions. So the P, that's the F. The P is put your data to work. Get the data scientists to examine data and participate with the team in question. So don't have these functional silos. Oh, we in marketing, we do Twitter Tails analytics, we do Instagram feedback, and we're doing Facebook, whatever. No, have your data scientists sit in on the marketing team, sit in on the sales team. You know, why are SPA returns so high? Get to the bottom of it, and break the siloed approach down. And determine how your data sets you apart competitively. Competitively, take the taxi industry. We all know the Uber success story. Everything about an Uber experience is measured. From the time you engage to hail that cab, now they're even giving you food. I don't know what they're going to do next, deliver Zoom, what do you call these things, drone parcels to your front door. You know, everything's measured. Look at the rest of the taxi industry. We'll say no more. And you know the success stories in that particular space. And B is build. Build the needed organizational capabilities. What L'Oreal did in their drive, they employed 2,500 digitally smart individuals, largely digital natives or the younger generation. And they said to them, your brief is not to be smart and clever. We don't need all the clever stuff that confuse people. We want you to go and demystify what all this technology and what all this capability is about. And you've got 30,000 people to go and do it to, get on with it. So separate the management of data and technology. This is a very important step, and it's probably the crux of what needs to be done today. Your legacy system guys who've been there for 25, 30 years on an Oracle system or on a SAP system, or on a JD system, they know what that particular legacy hard and soft drive can do. What they're not good at is how you analyze, how you apply the algorithm, how you manipulate the data. That is for a different scale of individual. That's for your data scientist, your data analyst, your data architecture to a certain extent. But those two should be separated. And when the data scientist says we need cloud capability through DAS, LAS, or whatever the shared or public services is, then brief the good old IT legacy system guys and let them go and set that up. And they'll feel very proud of their achievements and what they've done. But the data scientist is there saying, how do I make Lego appealing to a grandfather? How can I get Lego to be built by a grandfather? Because a grandfather or grandmother will spend time with the grandchildren building Lego. So create the interest. There's an algorithm that can be applied to that behavior. And invite that grandparent to give Lego feedback on what the next generation of Lego pieces should be. So again, make sure the quality of your data is of the highest level. And for this, as we've said with the L'Oreal example, appoint somebody who understands data. Appoint them to your board. Put them right up there and make them responsible to your chief executive. Okay? We're almost done. Leading decision-driven data analytics, article by De Lange and Buntoni. But data analysts often fail to produce insights for making effective business decisions, but it's not their fault. Leaders need to make sure that data analytics is decision-driven. Okay, on the next slide, I'll show you how we get this done. Okay, if we start with to be data-driven, it focuses on available data, and that's not where we need to be. There's an example there of Rolling Boulder. It's a media company in the US where they operate through online subscriptions, and they built up a fantastic universe and following. But to keep and to prevent subscription churn, they've tried to introduce the gift incentive to keep their, let's call it their customers and followers on board. And there's a lot of question as to the validity of doing that. So you're using the past to base a future decision on, which is not necessarily good. The next example there is data-driven, often means reinforcing pre-existing beliefs. So Gwen and Jenny's ice cream vendor business, also North American, they use Twitter as their social media marketing platform to go and research their market and to influence and convert ice cream eaters to the brand. A lot of questions can be asked around that, and I'm sure Dana with her social media expertise can reflect on this particular almost misguided information, because if you're a loyal Gwen and Jenny's ice cream eater, are you going to use Twitter to be reminded of the wonderful taste in the ice cream? I don't think you will. You'll probably go straight to the store and just buy it, or go and look up on the website what their new product range is. So Twitter will provide you through their 3-tiered analytics platform with data that you want, but is it the correct data? Is it data that quality-wise can help you make firm decisions on? And I'm not criticizing Twitter. It's a fantastic platform. But we need to move from data-driven, which focuses on the past, and you derive your decisions to the future, to decision-driven data. And that table there summarizes it up. And I'm just going to read the decision-driven points. Is you must anchor on a decision to be made. Find the data for a purpose. Start from what is unknown, like Nissan did, like the engine manufacturers in the Western Cape did. They didn't know what was causing their standard deviation. When they investigated it, they found it was accuracy of welds. And empower your data-driven decision makers, people in your organization who are entrusted with data as a responsibility and a key performance area. These people must be empowered, and they must be heard in cross-functional team meetings. They must make sure that there is a link at board level that's an influential link with the ear of the CEO as a direct next step. Okay, the last slide, last process point. Empowering a data-driven culture from the inside out. We've alluded to this as well, but transforming a company into a truly data-driven business involves fundamental organizational changes. There's a 7-point model. It's quite busy. I hope you can all see it. But the central part is to have what they call a self-service data program. And this is an article by Jonathan Tudor. But it needs to grow from inside out. And if we go to the top, we see that traditional business intelligence and data warehousing was where data management started. Today, and that was fine for legacy system guys, to the SAP IT guys to go and fiddle with. But today you've got data lakes. You've got heaps of information that those data lakes need to be accessed. They need to focus on extracting the appropriate data and then to look at the outcomes of that data. And that is where your data scientist and analyst, that's the new world where those people operate in. Measuring effectiveness, I mentioned the KPIs, your key performance indicators need to change. There's an example of General Electric avionics. Basically what General Electric do is that every engine on every Boeing or Airbus or whatever they power, if they just use the avionics, every one of those engines is monitored 24/7. And they can actually negate planned maintenance on those engines by being able to pick up the faults way before those faults start appearing. And that makes the airline in today's world far more profitable. But they've used 3 KPIs. They've used financial KPIs, they've used utilization KPIs, in other words, through dashboard control. And here they've used gamification methodology to make it interesting for operators to to use their dashboards, but it's to provide feedback to management to say, okay, we need to ground Boeing Airbus or whatever number 372, which is operated by Kenyan Airlines. Let's ground that plane. Let's take out engine 2 and 4 and fix the oil pump there and fix the filter system on the other one. And in the process, through focusing on your financial KPIs, your utilization, and then your data and innovation pipeline, you start encouraging innovation throughout your business, not just marketing on social media, but procurement, using, for example, as Amazon does with their suppliers, they use the Prime platform to analyze supplier performance. Start governance from within. Your governance, don't get to where, as I said, Zuckerberg got when he had to go and talk to the Senate. I don't know if you saw how many sips he had in his glass of water when he was in front of that American Senate. He was so nervous he didn't know where to turn, because he wasn't in front of a t-shirt brigade of skateboarders in his building. He was now up against the suits in our office who've been there for generations, okay? And they totally out of touch. So we won't go there. But start your governance, your data management from the bottom of your organization and grow with it. My son is doing a LLD in artificial intelligence and the aspect on legal ethics within an organization. And he's pretty up to speed on all of that, but that's where one starts. Have data stewardships. We mentioned this. Have your data stewards throughout the organization in each of the functional silos and try and break those silos down. We've spoken about using cross-functional teams. If you need to onboard talent, get the talent in. And data moves from IT to technical people to non-technical and analytical people. As I said at the start of this talk, sometimes it's the non-technocrat that actually puts the story across the best, in the best social context. So that takes care of the 6 steps. I've probably gone on a bit long. I'm very passionate about all this stuff, but there's one concluding slide, and this is from Amazon Web Services, and I'm just going to talk about the 3 highlights there. But developing the data-driven organization, culture, leadership, and learning. I won't pronounce that guy's name because I'll get it wrong and I might not sound good. But the 3 aspects are demystify data. I sat with Richard in July 2017, and Richard said exactly that to me. Demystify what's going on. Business processes are the same. It's the method of delivery that has changed. Deal with resistance. You are going to have huge resistance from a cultural point of view throughout your organization. And more so, where IT have to be told, look after the legacy system and let the data scientist pull the data in the right format from your data lake, your cloud, or wherever you're managing the data. And learn by doing. So bottom line is, let's get on with it, because this isn't going to get any less in the world and in business going forward. I don't think COVID, we haven't seen the last of the spikes. This is with us for a long time to come. So let's get on board. That's all I have to share.
Cool. Thanks, Garth. I'm going to leave my camera off. It seems to, when I switch it on, it seems to crackle. But yeah, thanks for that, Garth. That was fascinating. I must admit, we've been talking about this for 3 years. But there were 3 questions that I've written down here that seem to me be the biggest, most insurmountable issues. You've mentioned some of them, but the first one is the implication for strategy development. Is that, you know, you go to business school, let's say the baby boomers or Generation X or Y or millennials or whatnot, they go to business school and they learn the fundamentals of strategy development. And it's pretty straightforward, no matter which model that you use. But now with this technological change, you're now asking the guys to, you know, the focus has always been the numbers, the finance, you know, the customer experience. But now there's another component to it, which can't just be another objective that needs to be achieved. You're talking about fundamentally changing an organization? Like you mentioned, how do you teach some gray-haired white guy, 55 years old, sitting in the stores, who's an absolute guru on where all the spares or the logistics are, or the fleet management, and now he has to work off data-driven decisions. So some data scientist has written an analytical model for him, to give him the, to make the decisions for him in a way, or make his job a little bit easier. So that, how does one bring that into strategy development?
Rich.
Sorry, it's a long-winded thing, but that's my question.
Okay, I'll have a stab at it. Excellent question, and I just think the way forward is for us to re-examine ourselves, because if we're leading an organization, take all your top-end businesses down in Stellenbosch and the Rupert domain there. They need to take responsibility for data, and they have to manage data as the key asset in their business. If you don't, you told me this, Richard, if you don't have data as a key asset, then don't even ask the next question. Walk away, because that CEO is part of the dinosaur fraternity. They're not going to survive. And we spoke about that, as I say, almost 3.5 years ago. But I think one of the classics of how one approaches this at a let's call it an established CEO level is somehow that individual needs to take himself to London School of Business and enroll for a 3-month data-driven course, innovation course, and immerse himself in it. One of my research respondents shared this in a qualitative interview with me, where he took himself off for 3 months. He went and sat at London School of Business and learned about data. He then came back and sent his next 12 board members to do the same course. He then engaged Gibbs University to actually detail for the entire middle management structure of that business a equivalent program to what he'd been on at London School of Business. Those guys in turn were able to then enlist their lower line managers on the same program and or a Technicon related program. So that is an approach, and it's got to be an holistic approach endorsed by, I don't know if it's a Christo Visser or Yanni Mouton or Johan Rupert or Nicholas Oppenheimer or Patrice Mosepe. It's got to be set up from that level. And then a way of sort of alerting an operating CEO to the reality. You mentioned count my stock in my stores. You know that there are some storerooms, and I'm talking sophisticated corporates, where the top shelf of, let's call it the nuts and bolts, haven't seen a set of hands for 15 years. But stock take is done. They don't know how many bolts and nuts are actually in those boxes, because they've got to get a forklift, they've got to extend the forklift 3 stories high for some guy to peer into the boxes to read the stock. I sat with 2 redundant, very experienced, not redundant, but experienced SAA pilots who've repositioned their worlds and their offers, and they have gone into drone technology with the specific purposes of cleaning and counting stock. So they can operate a drone within a warehouse, and through intelligent scanning, they can barcode read exactly what boxes are on the shelf, and through photographic imaging and return, they can photograph what's sitting in the box of spares. And in so doing, your stock take level, your accuracy improves, and your stock becomes worth a hell of a lot more on your balance sheet. But also helps you manage your inventory to a just-in-time inventory system, which is really what you want. So I don't know if that answers the question, but those are 2 examples that come to mind as to how one could approach this.
Okay, I'll try and keep my second question a little bit shorter then.
Yeah.
if you look at the evolution of roles at, say, an executive level, so 20, 30 years ago, your top salesperson / marketing person became the CEO, which made a lot of sense. And over the last 20 years, you've seen the CFO sort of migrate into the COO role and then into the CEO role because there was a lot of focus on finance. But now this new way where everything is now digitally driven is that your traditional CEO, CFO, COO, and even CIO are not trained and they are not equipped to move into like a CDO type of role. Is that, you know, for a variety of reasons, the age of finances with data now is starting to come to an end. So is a traditional CIO type of role, and even sales and marketing. What sort of, let's say, I don't know, for want of a better word, the portfolio or what does this person look like that needs to become a CDO?
Rich, good question. The initial focus on appointing a CDO is someone from a data-rich background, someone with actuarial capabilities, someone with, you know, good, strong business science, IT, for more financial management applications, someone along those lines. But the modern day chief data or chief information officer can also be someone from a marketing agency, like L'Oreal used their lady, Subramina Roche. She headed up a digital agency, and they brought her in to lead a total business refocus and reorientation. Whether she was equipped as a data analyst in her training, I don't know. She could have been a very good brand manager, come marketing manager, gone up the ranks that way. But what she's got is she's been given the tools to manage that transformation. So she then has the vision aligned to the digital vision and the data vision of the business, and she aligns that to the overall company vision. And sometimes for that, you don't need too heavy an analytical brain. You potentially need a more generalistic brain, someone who really understands, you know, where that organization is heading. I'll give you another example with L'Oreal. They changed their advertising spend totally. They used to operate on the basis of 10% of turnover goes into brand support. Well, a lot goes into brand support, but they produce their own content. They in-house. They select their social media platforms. When they want to find out about a particular fragrance or hair care or whatever, they float what they call a digital love brand. So they go to an influencer and they go to a community and they say, Beyonce, for your S-curl that you have in your hair, beautiful, will you endorse, let's call it L'Oreal Super Curl? And she says, sure, man, just put $35 million in my account. And away she goes. And suddenly the entire community follows the S-curl product.
Yeah.
So that level of spend, their R&D spend is zero to, well, they still pay their scientists, but they use their social media platforming to detect the needs of their consumer and their customer upfront, let alone the customer side, where the pipeline through which the product is sold. I don't know if that helps.
No, it does. Okay, my last question, and I hope people just bear with me, but I mean, we've been in this consulting game now for a while, and we've both seen projects fail horribly because of culture change or the resistance to culture. And I see this as the biggest barrier to overcome. I mean, we've walked into English-speaking British culture, Afrikaans culture companies, German culture companies and whatnot. And those are very strong cultures to try and break down, to change. And all it takes is a key middle manager or someone like that to stop the whole process, and the thing just becomes extended and the project just eventually ends and it fails. How in your research, what sort of key factors did they highlight to say what will make a successful transformation, especially from a cultural perspective, if you want to change your company into a data-driven company? I mean, you've mentioned Google and Amazon, but those guys grew up.
Yeah,
So it's embedded in their DNA. So they're actually bad
yeah,
examples. But it's like an
yeah.
old-fashioned, like John Deere, Bell Equipment, Barlow Rand, these type of companies that have been around for a very, very long time, have their DNA it's in the foundations of their buildings. How does one change that?
I think a hugely challenging question, because culture change is not it's not something you do overnight. It's something you've got to think through carefully. Your top level thinking, your visionaries. Almost 100 years ago, Soroka Honda stood in his garage on a crate and said to his 2 employees, "Gentlemen, we're going global." So that was the vision of one Japanese guy who was making taillights for some company in Japan. And that was his vision 100 years ago. Well, you look at where Honda is today. They've permeated every form of transport and appliance and everything.
Yeah.
Your vision as to where your state company needs to go, I alluded to it earlier. It's got to come from your CEOs. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, he started that business when he left his New York trading business, highly successful. Almost 35, 40 years ago. He started in a garage, him and Mackenzie, his wife, or now ex-wife, in a garage in Seattle. And they built Amazon from nothing with hardship galore. But he had this amazing vision of making books available to everybody. And that's what drove him. So in a nutshell, to answer that question, this starts with your top level visionary thinking. And it's at the top, you have to change. Kodak actually had a digital camera. They could have gone into the cellular phone market, but it wasn't consistent at the board level at the time. They didn't believe. They believed in film and cameras. They had the technology. They could have been successful, and they chose not to do it. So there are those companies that are today, they're in the history books. But if they had just changed their culture years ago, they would still have been operating today. So it starts at the top. It's top down. And then from the bottom up, when you develop your data-driven perspectives for the business.
Okay, thanks for that.
I can add to this that the vision is that's also like what you say with the big companies, with the corporates. That's something that it's always out there, and that's the way to engage your employees. By sharing that vision, by having it. Like I was working for a company that we had 5 different type of behaviors that everyone need to follow in everything we needed to do. There's certain sayings we were using all the time because it's part of building that culture in. And that's how you actually also get everyone to be involved as well.
Cool. Anybody else got any comments or questions?
I just think it's a very great topic, and I agree with it. And I was lucky enough to work with companies that this is the way they were working. So for me, it made sense. And that's part of what I do. And I think like in everything in life, if you don't look at the data, if you don't know how to look at it, to read it, to search for it, and to use it and help you to grow, you will always stay behind. If you're not be very quick to notice the different changes, to adopt things very quickly, just by looking around you, look at the different like that on everything, and not only on your business, then you're going to be always on a me too strategy, always trying to catch up after instead of leading the market, and it doesn't matter on which industry.
Yeah, Dana, it's right. You've got to use your data to set you apart from your competitors, and you've got to build your capabilities around that. Very true, very true.
Cool.
No, I also found it very fascinating Thank you, Garth, for sharing.
No, pleasure. As I say, I just wish these guys, it takes him 7 months to mark a dissertation. My goodness, my dissertation will be out of date by the time I get my results. I'll have to start again. Oh, gosh. Anyhow, but Richard was very, very instrumental in steering me to the top, through the topic and you know, to develop it. A lot of what was in that presentation, I've got the notes here. He told me, we laughed yesterday when we were going through it. He told me that 3.5 years ago, July 2017, he said to me, demystify technology and what's going on. Lo and behold, Amazon Web Services, in all their wisdom, what did they say? Demystify it.
I'm glad I could help.
Don't wait anymore for 3 years. Don't wait. If you have an idea, go and do it. Just execute.
Yeah, no, one must,
Yeah, no, I must admit, Dana, it's been, you know, through my career, especially the last 10 years, is that when you talk to C-level people across the globe, it's just how people get sucked up into IT jargon. I'm sure there's some IT marketing guru somewhere in the world that keeps changing the names of technology that's been around for such a long time. You know, they talk about cloud. Cloud's been around from day one when mainframe was around, you know, with green screens and things like that. It's just that they just keep changing the jargon and people get swept up into this thing. It's like, oh, we must now all be on the cloud. Like, why? How does it fit into your architecture? How does it fit into your strategy? What do you actually want from it? You're going to spend a lot of money. Somebody's going to make money out of you, but why are you actually doing it? You know?
But I think that that's the problem in general, and especially like when you were saying the example of Twitter with the ice cream. You know, that's the problem for a lot of people. There's an idea or something or a new name, a new feature, a new trend, and everyone thinks like, oh my God, I need to be there. I need to be there. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to be like have a FOMO and like be left behind. But wait a second, stop, understand. Is that the right thing for your business? Is this in line with your business strategy? Is this in line with your vision? Is this where you want to be? Is this where your target market is? Is it right for your message? There's so many things you need to ask yourself before you just jump into something. But that's the problem. Like Instagram became a very trendy thing during COVID. Now everyone wants to be there and learn it, but it doesn't mean that it's right for you. And it's in everything, like, you know, and also like the different platforms are changing. They've started in one direction. And now they've created more and more stuff, like, for example, Instagram developing Reels in a competition with TikTok. And now TikTok, with all the blames around them, also changing stuff. Because especially after the story about that young kid that suffocated himself and died, you know, a lot of things. And now there is even the Clubhouse, which is an amazing platform, but it's still on a beta. It's still not even like up there, but people are using it like crazy. And that's the thing. But everyone needs to stop and not jump into the water so quickly.
Yeah, no, I think the key thing that people miss when they start talking about analytics, business intelligence, and dashboards, and how to present data, et cetera, is that we all want to rush to that. Instead of saying, hang on, wait, let me design what I want, and then go and find out what do I need to get to what I want. Because that's when you start identifying gaps in your business, in your IT architecture, and everything else. And then it's a reiterative loop and go back and say, well, maybe I need to change what I want because I can't actually get what I want, or it's too expensive. I mean, I remember one time I had a conversation with somebody at Clover, and it was a completely unrelated conversation, but they were talking about research that they did in the 60s and 70s when, I don't know if you can remember a lot of the movies about buying Eskimo pie on Durban Beach. It's a ice cream lolly with a chocolate sleeve or something on it. And they got their data from those black guys who were running around with a cooler box on what were people looking for. And then they redesigned the orange lolly, because the parents would take the Eskimo pie, but the kids wanted like a sorbet type of orange lolly that, even though it's sticky and all the rest of it, you can quickly wash your hands off in the sea. And they got that data from those, like I say, the black couriers who was selling the ice cream for them. So the idea was there way back, you know, collect the data first, let's see what we want, and then we're going to reverse engineer or how we're going to do it. And it hasn't changed, even though the marketing jargon has changed. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Hey, Carolyn, you raised a hand.
Yeah, I just have this urge to say what you've just said, Richard, is absolutely fascinated me for, or been fascinating me for, since I've been at university. I did some, just a sideline on marketing, not marketing, advertising, but ever since, the way people gather information, the way people um, put advertisements together, I just find absolutely fascinating. And the thing is, it's the basics, and people miss that so often.
Yeah.
They want to go for the big shot situations, and and even in social media, Dana, you would agree. People put out all these extremely highly sophisticated graphics and stuff, and actually you just need to say 2 sentences about how your day was, if I can put it that way.
And I can agree, by the way, about what you're saying, because, like the community, for example, that I manage, if I'll post like even just a question, like share with me in an emoji how you feel today, the amount of reaction I'm going to get is huge versus like, if you put something with lots of tips and sophistication and things like that, but you still need to find a balance between the two of them. And I think that a lot of companies, what they're trying to do is to really try to copy paste the big companies, but copy pasting it in the wrong way. It's like when you copy paste for like trying to cheat on an exam, and you copy it with the mistakes as well.
No, none of us ever did that.
I think along.
I don't know
Sorry.
what you're talking about, Dana. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I was the one that people were copying from me, but like,
Yeah.
but I always make jokes about how like people also copy, and you see in the way they're writing down. It doesn't matter if it's like they with the mistake, but it's the same thing. Like if you're already copying the big companies, copying them on having a clear strategy, of having a vision, of having a clear definition of the target market, of having a clear marketing and a strategy plan. Don't start your business, then after 3 years say, oh, maybe I need to have a business plan.
Must have that up front. Yeah. I think also in the research I've been exposed to, there's amongst your startups and your SMEs, there's a huge authenticity attached to connecting with an individual, and an individual that can be trusted. For example, McKinsey, they plotted their copybook with a lot of negative publicity they have with, let's call it, the South African situation. But maybe Richard Roberts or Garth Gaffley or Steph North-Nagel, they look like good, honest guys. And not only Dana and Carolyn and Courtney and Natalie, they look like honest ladies and women. And we want to engage with them because they talk our language. And I think that's so important. I sent my son my presentation yesterday. He's 33. I said, but have a look at this thing for Buddy. Make sure my graphics are aligned and then I'm okay, man. I want to, impress the folk tomorrow. And he's got a legal, best legal writing in his law degree at UCT class prize, and he's an English major and very good. I said, Dad, I can't really improve much. I've fixed a few sentences, but it's not too bad. Keep going. Otherwise, he didn't want to criticize me because he knows I'm more experienced than him when I put a set of boxing gloves on. So, but I mean, it's good to be current. And the point I'm making is that understanding your audience, and in our case, the data and analytical audience is vital. Rich is positioning his strategy options through modular offers, through an entire strategic offer. As soon as I've got my results, I'll be offering my digital, what have I called this thing? Developing a digital transformation model to enhance the strategy development process for leadership in the manufacturing sector. And that's the branded goods manufacturing sector. And I've done 2 articles, one for a textbook called Inclusive Growth in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and then Stellenbosch Business School, the SAICE journal. done articles just to also benchmark against relevance. But what I want to do is use that in my blog and in my communication and my video clips to authenticize the offer out to, let's call it the emergent business person of tomorrow. And it's based on, I won't say how many years, but a good couple of decades of being out there, been through the valley of the hard knocks and successes. And yeah, it's authenticity. And I'm sure, Dana, you'll bear with me that if people can relate to Dana as the source of their social media credibility, they trust you, and you've built up that trust and engendered that trust over a long period of time. And we, Richard and myself, have to do the same level of trust building, but know our audience and make the personal offer a credible offer.
So I'll add on you, it's not only to know your target market, but it's also to know yourself. The people
Yes.
buy from people. And if you are true to yourself, it will come true to them as well. And that's why, like when you were saying about writing the presentation, that's your wording, that's you, that's, you know, and people get it from you. Like we always try to also like improve ourselves and maybe write in a different way. I'm more like things like this, but no, bottom line, when people come to work with you, that's the language. That's what they see, that's what they get, and that's what they feel the connection to, and that's why they came from, because they trust you, because something was coming true to them, and that's the important part. So if we know ourselves, so we can be true and honest with ourselves and be authentic, and it will come right to our target market that we are building relationships with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it took probably 8-9 years of being in the e-commerce space, leading digital transformation in pharmaceutical organizations, and then trying to sell a gamification platform into big business as the way forward. For me to pick up the relevance of resistance at, let's call it, my generational level. Honestly, it's bad. And how many times I was told, go and talk to the marketers, go and talk to my brand manager there. She's in charge of our digital program. And you cringe, you think, oh no, please no, don't tell me this. But it's happened, and it's still happening. And you know, I think the thinking that, like folks at Richard, my age and stage, we refer to as cuspers. We might be generationally in the digital disciple grouping, but we think like digital natives, and one has to. You have to be current. I look at no, I won't even go there. My friends, I said, no, okay.
Okay.
Enough.
All right, so we're basically running way over our hour mark. Is there any final comments from anyone? Not. Okay. Garth, that was fascinating. I'm glad I could walk a part of this journey with you for the last 3.5 years, and I really hope the university finally sends you academic record and says A+. I think you deserve it. So for the rest,
Richard, sorry.
yes,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep us posted, Garth.
Will do.
Have that. We need the proof, though.
Well, the proof is that 3.5 years ago, I had a mop of dark hair, and now I've got a central parting where Boeing 747 can land because there's nothing left and it's gone white.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's what
Thanks,
IT can do. Okay, cool. Guys, I will let you know.
Good. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
I'll let you know if our next session in 2 weeks' time on which company we are going to be talking to and what the subject will be. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.